Hi, this is David Williams. I'm here with Susan Trumpler. Susan, how are you doing today?
Excellent. How about you, David?
Fine, thank you. Well, before we dive in, at the end of this, I'll give you an opportunity to give me more information with your website and things of that nature. But if you would start by just mentioning who you are and what you do briefly, and then we'll dive into the conversation.
Sounds good. Thank you. So I'm Susan Trumpler, and I am the founder of Unstoppable Women in Sales, which is a coaching kind of resource for. It started out for women sales professionals in corporate sales, but I do get a good bit of people who are in sales, small business owners. David, they always have to be selling. So anyone who is trying to influence anyone is kind of my specialty. I love human behavior, and it fascinates me um, by how people can sometimes get in the way of their own success, and then other people who can just accelerate through anything. So that's the other.
I'm sure you've seen a lot of both sides, and obviously, someone working with you, you're trying to get them. Well, some people I'm sure are already quite successful, so but you're helping them get to the next level. And the ones that are finding the roadblocks, I'm sure the ones that you're helping through those roadblocks so they can get out of the way of themselves. As a small business owner, uh, where wearing a bunch of hats, right? Like a lot of small business
Yeah.
owners do. Part of what I do is I'm in the sales game, not in corporate sales, but selling what we do in our business. So what I want to talk to you about today, or want you to talk about,
Mhm.
is what people do in good times and bad times, because
Mhm.
obviously when things are great, people are going to make different decisions. And when things are, than they do when things are not so great. And then obviously when things are not so great, sometimes people get in a rut and they just think differently and don't do some of the same things. So share with us some information of good and bad and how to find the balance and what type of advice you have for people.
Absolutely. So it's so interesting, David, because we've just gone through a period of time that has been exceptionally good for quite a while. And I think people get almost like a sense of entitlement where it's of course it's going to be good. And they start having, more confidence, they're more willing to take risks, right? And they're thinking this will always be okay. I can do this and it's always going to be like it is now. We get lulled into that kind of state of mind. But I think we all forget that life is 50-50. There are going to be good times and there's going to be challenges. We're just presented with a really big one right now, but it doesn't matter if it's an external source like the economy giving us challenges or a health situation giving us challenges. There are going to be times personally where you're just not on top of the game. And so the biggest risk that I see of this with people is that they have a challenge adjusting mentally and losing that entitlement and not not diving down and falling into a funk saying, oh, this is hard, this is so hard. There's it's just kind of an adjustment. You just got to know sometimes things are good, sometimes things are tough. Got to
Here's
adjust.
some of the things since we've known each other a while and had some previous conversation. I'm looking down at some notes. You've said before about moving through adversity.
Yeah.
So obviously, when times are good, we don't think about adversity too much, but there's opportunity in adversity. So we don't want to make this a negative conversation, but
No.
I do want you to, and I know you're a positive person. You got that big smile, and a lot of the people, one of the calls, the interviews I did this morning, I've known the guy for years, and man, he's dynamic with his big smile. So I know you're not a negative person, but let's talk about
Mhm.
moving through adversity, and then also how people, like what you just said there, when things are good, we have a tendency not to think about adversity, right? It's like, oh, everything's
Exactly.
good, I don't really need to think about what if.
Mhm.
So talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, I believe that it's all about your mindset. It's around how you look at things. And I always encourage my clients when they're having a challenge, I tell them, listen, this, you do not grow when things are easy. You just keep doing the same thing and it's giving you good results. And you're like, oh, this is awesome. but you begin to almost coast, right? Growth happens when you're in the valleys. And it really is your opportunity. And it's your opportunity, and you have the time to really focus on it and create that change. It's your opportunity to find um, new ways of doing things in ways that you wouldn't have even thought of in the past or tried in the past, and they could be actually the answer to your next phase of growth. Right? Think about it, David. Have you ever run, like, tried to say, okay, I'm going to run a marathon, or I'm going to run for
Oh,
a
I've
good
tried
distance?
the running part because I thought about going in the military at one point, and I looked at like what's the minimum requirements that I've got to be able to get through boot camp with. And this was actually after I was married, when I was in my 20s. I think I was 24ish or something like that. So
Mhm.
obviously a lot better shape and a lot younger than I am now. But yeah, I kind of like, okay, I've got to be able to do this, and I got to be able to do this in a certain amount of time. So
Mhm.
now I'm going to start doing this running. And so
Right.
that's interesting you bring that up, because that's something many years ago. But yeah, I've done that before with like,
Yeah.
this is what I need to try to achieve.
It's something that a lot of people can relate to. When you first started, you probably thought, this is going to be impossible, right? And even running, a block or a quarter mile, or a mile, and then 2 miles. But after you did it, and after you pushed through it, all of a sudden, running a block or running a half a mile or 1 mile was like, oh, well, this is a piece of cake, right? You would have never gotten to that level of expertise at running if you didn't have a bigger goal in mind. So that's the way you have to look at any kind of adversity is, yep, it's going to be uncomfortable. Yep. I won't die from it. I will keep pushing forward, and it will make me be better and stronger in the long run. And you're going to do things that you never imagined were possible before this.
And that makes me think of setting, what I hear, and part of what you're saying there is setting some small goals, the
Mhm.
block, the half mile. I remember, I think it was Tony Robbins told a story many years ago that I heard, that somebody started out, they wanted to run a marathon. So it's interesting you bring that up, but they started out by like running to the stop sign at the end of the street. Right. That was
Yes.
like step one to get to where they wanted to go. And so, what I hear you saying in there, a couple of things. Opportunity is around us all the time, especially in adversity. So sometimes people
Yes.
will get tied up in adversity and tied up in difficult times,
Mhm.
and forget to look for the opportunities, and then trying to set those small goals so that even in times of adversity. And this is another, it's interesting you bring it up, like so many things. I used to listen to Zig Ziglar on cassette in the 1980s, so I'm dating
Ooh, aging
myself a
yourself,
little
dude.
bit. So listening to Zig Ziglar, I remember one of his things, and you probably can appreciate this by coaching people in sales, is a salesperson in a slump, go out and sell a pen.
That's
No,
right. Get a
start with
win.
something small, right? Sell a pen and get a sale under your belt,
Mhm.
and don't worry about the big sale. And
That's right.
so I think a lot of times, like I'm self-employed. So obviously I like working with some of the corporate clients, but I appreciate the smaller businesses, or even the individuals that come in, for just a headshot. And so sometimes it definitely feels good just to get that headshot business, compared
Mhm.
to, obviously it takes a balance. And I
Oh,
think,
yes.
I hear you saying that, because I've heard you say, well, you said it earlier on, I think 50-50, right? Things are
That's
good
right.
and things are bad. And so you've got to learn how to find the balance and try to, work through everything.
That's
So
exactly right.
what kind of things does that bring to your mind as I toss
Mhm.
that stuff out?
Oh, it does. Here's the thing that I think is critical too, is sometimes you have to adjust your expectations. So a lot of us, business owners, rightly so, we are all focused on revenue. It's like it's the golden prize. We got to get it. And we do. But there are small milestones along the way towards that revenue goal. And when the revenue goal gets challenging because there is adversity and there's things happening out there that are out of your control, Focus on the things that you can control and focus on the small wins. And I like to call it, the way I talk about it when I'm coaching someone is, you have a currency that's other than revenue. You can create currency along the path towards revenue by providing some form of value, so that when the dollars are available to you to bring into your business, you're going to cash in on that currency and be able to grab the win because you've been doing the right things all along the road.
That's I've heard you say that before about currency. Is
Mhm.
in a previous conversation that we had
Mhm.
about currency, not just being money, and there's things that we can do. I'm going to look at, um, getting stuck is one of the things that you and I have talked about in a past conversation, and serving others and supporting. So let's talk a little bit about getting stuck, and then serving and supporting others. Not obviously, sometimes it's a little bit easier to serve and support. Well, I don't know. It can be easy and it can be difficult even when we're busy, because sometimes we say, I'm too busy. I just don't have time to volunteer or do this or do that. And then obviously we see so many people with high level positions like a CEO of a company
Mhm.
taking time out of his or her day to volunteer and serve others. So talk
That's
to me
right.
for a moment about serving others, both when things are good and in times of adversity. And then the other piece that I mentioned in there is, getting stuck in a rut, but then thinking, like when you said the currency part, the thing that I thought about was, getting a return later. So serving somebody now by just
Mhm.
sending them a card, sending them, I mean, I know that sounds like really old school, but a guy that I was talking to earlier said he's picking up the phone and
Yeah.
calling people, but just
Mhm.
saying, hi, Susan, how are you doing? How's the family going? And not trying to sell him anything or sell him on his business. So talk to me for a moment about serving others and that being a form of currency that can come back,
Mhm.
and be a benefit down the road.
Yeah. I have to say, so when you think about sales and opportunities for selling, it's about exchanging value. And I give you this, I serve you, I'm able to provide something that, solves a challenge for you or helps you get closer to your goals. You give me money for it. It's a beautiful exchange. I love it. Sometimes in times like this, though, what I'm hearing a lot of people say is that um, they don't want to be tone deaf. Is that the right way to put it? They don't want to be asking for business because they would be perceived as being insensitive to what's happening in their customer or prospects world. Um, I really challenge people to think it through and make certain that they're not just, making a story up in their head about that. But if it is true, right, then the next thing that you have to ask them is exactly what you're saying, David, is then how can you serve this person right now? What can you offer to them? Is there anything that you can do? And I'm not saying give your product away for free or do, discount your business, because I don't want you to devalue yourself, but you can offer support like your friend. Hey, what can I do? I'm thinking of you, and here's what I can provide for you. Here's some information about, and it might not have anything to do with what you're selling, but it's about what they need in the moment. And so serving others without asking for anything in return will create a connection with someone that's deeper than anything else. It's actually the hardest thing for a salesperson to do when they're trying to sell is create a connection with somebody, because people are like, whoa, wait a second. You want something from me, so I got to be careful. I got to be guarded. Man, for you to be able to connect with someone with no immediate agenda in mind shows that person the kind of person you are. I believe that any difficult situation makes you more of what you are. So people are either going to see you as someone who is adding value to them in some way without anything in return, and think about, hey, when it comes time for me to do business with someone, that's the person I want to do business with. Someone who is willing to put themselves out there without asking for anything. That's kind of the foundation of that currency thing is, I'm not asking you for money right now. I'm not asking you to buy I'm just trying to create a connection with you. That's the value. So,
Yeah, that makes sense. So there's the thing that a lot of people get caught up in, and because we've all been on both sides of it, I think, with people trying to sell us, and if we're in either the selling business or self-employed business, we've been on the sales side and we've been on the receiving, somebody, the phone ringing, and I've got this to sell you, a telemarketer, without really getting into, or even if they, I get a call and they're like, how are you today? And I'm like, I don't know this person. How are you today? Where are they headed? With it, what do they want? Right. Um,
right.
I think, I was able to experience something recently where I was able to give back, and somebody wanted to pay me. And I said, no, it's absolutely free. It's my gift. And I was glad that I was able to do that. And I appreciate the fact that they did offer to pay, but that was not my motive. And that's not what I was trying to accomplish. Now, I will admit, as being a small business owner, obviously you said it early on,
Mhm.
we need revenue, and that's part of it, right? You can't just like live on love only, right? My wife of 30 years she knows we can't just live on love, but if we had our choice to like just kick back and be on the beach every day and that type of stuff and not have to like
Mhm.
generate revenue, I think we'd all rather like have some things we could do. But with a lot of what you said, trying to figure out how to give back so that we're genuine, about it, and that
Yes.
there's a sincerity there, and when we can truly say. And I know I've had my experiences on the selling side with things, of being
Mhm.
probably overly salesy, and then at other times been like this recent situation that just like, no, you don't owe me anything. It's truly a gift.
Right.
And I got to admit, when I'm able to give back, or pay for somebody's coffee in the car behind me, what's their total, and pay for it, that whole pay it forward thing, it feels good. It feels
It
good to do
does.
that. And I think for those who have experienced that, and I want to be more of that type of person. And one of the things that you said, and I've heard you say before, is in times of adversity, um, the true you, I think, comes out, right?
Mhm.
It's like
Yep.
when things are good, it's easy to be a certain way, but who are
Mhm.
you when the challenges hit you right between the eyes? Who do you become? Are you that negative person? Are you totally focused on what you need to do for you? Which I do agree, you need to take
Mhm.
care of you and take care of your family. But once that's kind of secure, I heard a friend of mine recently say, I actually put a video out on social media that said, I made sure, everything was okay, in his circle basically. And then I immediately started saying, what can I do for other people?
That's right. That's right.
So,
Nothing lifts your heart more than being able to be in service to others. I mean, it's just, even think about the Grinch who stole Christmas, right? He was a miserable, miserable whatever. I won't call him a human being, but when he brought joy to that little girl, even his heart melted. It's just, it is. And that's the other thing about adversity is, quite often, personally, it's easy to sink into almost a slump, right? You need to get your energy and you need to get that small win somewhere, but it's hard to get out of that place of, well, the thought that went through my head in the beginning is like, it just doesn't matter. No matter what I do, it just doesn't matter. Right. There was no urgency. There was no, and those are poisonous thoughts. And so I apologize, David.
no, that's fine. I try to remember to check my stuff out,
Me
but all the
too.
dings and beeps and everything that we
I
have going on
know.
these days.
I know it's crazy. But what I was saying is that the more that you can create a new normal, but a, a scheduled and focused normal, the faster you're going to be able to adapt to any kind of adversity in your life. You really have to be very conscientious about, I know it sounds crazy, getting out of bed, getting dressed like you are going to be meeting with the most important prospect in your life today. You're going to create a schedule. You're going to stick to that schedule. And what's happening for your brain is When you are in that structured, forward thinking pattern, the adversity and the focus on the adversity falls away, and you're able to start thinking more creatively, more productively. But if you sink into it, it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that you're not going to be able to make shifts or changes or advancements because you're just like sinking into it.
Well, the more that you spend time thinking negatively and going down that path, I think the
Yeah,
harder it is to pull yourself out of it.
absolutely.
Obviously, during times of adversity, we're going to all have some thoughts that are not the best thoughts we've ever had. But let's, as we wrap this up, what I want to do is wrap it up with some really positive stuff. Not that we've got
I
that
agree.
negative. We did talk about adversity, and I think we do need to talk about
Yeah.
good and bad times. But bring us home with some information that is just like good sound advice. Some of the things, obviously, this is what you do, giving people advice and that are in the sales world. And just talk to us in these closing moments here about some like, do this and do that. And here's
Okay.
something to focus on. And just give me like some super highlights there as we wrap this thing up.
Actionable.
Yeah, there you
Actionable.
go. This
Here's
is
the
where
thing.
people need to start taking notes.
Oh, and it's so, here's the thing that you have to know. You are completely in control of your future and your success. And the more that you accept that and create your future rather than thinking I'm just a victim of the circumstances, the more successful you're going to be. So here's the process for doing it. You need to have a mindset that you are unstoppable. Sorry, business plug there.
Right.
Unstoppable. But here's the thing. It starts with a thought, and I it's as simple as that. You've got to be thinking positive. And I'm not talking airy fairy, unicorns and daisies. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is set your intention, say, this is what I'm going to do, and notice how you feel about it. Because what happens is when you start buying in, or maybe you've got CNN running in the background and you're hearing some really, just negative things, that is seeping into your mind. You're starting to feel negative. When you feel negative, you cannot act in a way that's going to get your results. You start acting scarcity and protection and closed in, and so you have got to really watch what you're thinking about, watch what's going into your mind, and then notice how you're feeling about it and how you feel, because that emotion is a vibration in your body. Have you ever noticed, David, when you are happy and excited, or you just made a sale, your vibration, your body is light. You're like, let's go, let's go, let's go. Okay, let's go. When you're starting to think about dark and horrible thoughts, your whole demeanor just gets heavy and dull and slow. Where do you think you're going to become successful? From which side of that emotion spectrum? Certainly not the heavy, dull, and slow.
Right.
So it's all about staying mentally acute and moving out of any negativity in an authentic way. But there's so many different ways to do it.
There's something I'm going to pull into what you said. You mentioned the word intention or intentions. And so being intentional, I'm going to let you talk for just a moment about being intentional before we truly wrap this up, because I've heard you and I've had a
Mm-hmm.
conversation where
Mm-hmm.
you talked about being intentional. So talk about that for just a moment.
Yeah. And I would use the word intentional and aware almost synonymously. When you let things happen to you, you're not being intentional. You're just reacting to situations. Oh, this is happening. It's almost like playing tennis or racquetball or something. You're on defense mode. Intentional says, I know where I'm going. I have a plan. I have a strategy. I'm going to work my plan. I'm going to keep on trying. There is no failure. The only failure there is if you stop trying. And I will work that plan until I get the results I want. And when you have that kind of intention that you're setting, you literally can't not be successful. Yes, there's going to be adversity along the way. So what? So what? Get over it. Grow from it. Learn from it. Move on.
Right. And I'll close this part out. You made me, when you said the so what, I'll mention this sales thing that I picked up on a few years ago, and then I'll have you tell folks how to find you on your website and things of that nature. But SW next. Some will, some won't. So what next?
Love it.
I probably picked up on that.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Might have been in the 90s.
Oh my
And
gosh, I love it.
it was called an SW next. Some will, some won't. So what next?
Oh, that's it. That's it.
So, and one of the things as a photographer that I've learned and known and kind of accept is photography is subjective. So some people are going to like my work and love my work. Other people, it's just not going to appeal to them. And I've got to understand that I can't appeal to everybody. Obviously I want to do a good job and try to win over clients and do that type of stuff, but my work is not going to appeal to everybody out there. And I think once we can accept that and then start putting those lists together, like you were saying, and being intentional and going after it and just, making it happen, right? Just keep going. And then your so what made me come up with that acronym that I had heard, sometimes you just have to,
one.
yeah, sometimes you just have to say, so what, I've got to move on. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing that one.
You're welcome.
Awesome.
So with that said, bring us home by repeating your name and then give us your website and any social media stuff and anything else you want to do as you close out. And then I will say goodbye once you're done with your part. So the floor is yours. I'm giving you permission to do a little bit of selling.
Thank you, David. So I am Susan Trumpler, and I have the website unstoppablewomenInsales.com. So that's a place you can go. I've got lots of free resources around things like what we've been talking about today. I'm also on Facebook. I have a private women's group in Facebook if anyone's interested in joining it. They do have to be a woman sales professional or small business owner, but it's Unstoppable Women in Sales Connect. It's a great network. A lot of people right now are looking for a community, and so that's another big place. I'm out on LinkedIn, Instagram, all the usual places, but we have a lot of fun together just talking about how to be successful. And that's, all you can ask for right now.
Well, Susan, I appreciate you joining me for this today and sharing this information. It's been a pleasure having you. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you. You too, David.